Hi, I'm Dr. Steve Rittner of the Rittners Floral School in Boston, Mass. It's a pleasure to welcome you into one of our classrooms today for this brief informational video. We hope that you enjoy it, have a great time watching it, and are inspired by its contents. We call this video The Amazing Flowers of June. What are the amazing flowers of June? Well, they're of course things that we take for granted, things like hydrangea and roses, things like that. But there are also some incredibly interesting materials, botanicals, that become available at this time. And we hope that you enjoy watching some of these in this brief video. Let's start off and go right into it. Here, for example, is one example of the amazing flowers of June. It's a really, really neat design. It's water-based, you can see. A very classical kind of container. But when we look at it, we see some really, really interesting things. We see, for example, Aremeris. Aremeris, isn't this an amazing, amazing flower? It comes in whites, it comes in yellows. It is just incredible, and it is a very, very good keeper. Blooms from the bottom, gradually works towards the top. Just trim the bottom off as they gradually open up, and you have a flower that really lasts incredibly well. So we've got some Aremeris in here. We also have another one of my favorite flowers of June, an interesting botanical that's kind of fun to play with. This stuff is called Physocarpus. Physocarpus. It is incredible. It has kind of a reddish tinge. They have some that's a little darker and some that's a little lighter. It's an incredible botanical. Makes your designs look really, really natural. A very, very pretty material. And then we've got Spirea. Spirea, one of my all-time favorites. Spirea in here, an incredibly good lasting flower. It's just a beautiful little display of some really, really neat things in this particular container. I think that you'll like it. The foliage is called prairie grass. It's an interesting foliage. Again, something available around this time. Now let's go from a classical look in a vase to something that's a little bit more chi-chi, a little bit more trendy, because the container obviously does have impact on that. We've got a cylinder with some aspidistra leaves in the cylinder. And again, we're making use of some of these wonderful botanicals available at this time of the year. We've got here some of our viburnum dentatum. It's a really, really neat botanical. You can see a close-up of it right here. It's got these incredible little sections here. We have some of our viburnum dentatum. We also have another one of my favorites. This is some of our willow, and it's a variegated willow with pinks and whites, and it gives a really, really neat effect here. We have, of course, some of our Physocarpus in here, and of course, some of our roses to give us natural contrast. And again, we have this very, very neat stuff. It's called prairie dock or prairie grass, which is being used to give us some contrast. It is an absolutely otherworldly design, something that you would expect to find in some sort of sci-fi movie, because it is kind of wild looking, but definitely representing the flowers of June. What else do we have? We've got some interesting things here, and we're going to come up with this one here. Look at this one. Wow. Big, showy. Again, making very, very good use of the flowers and florals available at this time of the year. We have our Aremeris up higher in this design, some incredible Aremeris. We have some of our roses, and then a combination of all kinds of things. Viburnum dentatum in here, some Physocarpus, some of our willows, just an incredible mixture of things in a very, very neat, otherworldly looking design. Let's go to a little bit larger, but in a little bit larger using water-based. And here's an interesting composition, again making use of the flowers of June. In this particular case, we happen to have some of our hydrangea. Isn't it absolutely gorgeous? We normally associate hydrangea with this time of year, but in addition to that, we have a nice contrast. We have some of our Spirea over here. We have some of our bells of Ireland here, some campanula here, a few roses, and then there's a variety of allium in this design that is really, really cool. It is a small little thing. It is called the allium drumstick. Look at it, isn't it cute? A little thing here. We've got a few of them right over here in this design. So we have an interesting combination of some really, really cool and interesting kinds of materials, giving kind of an asymmetric feel to it. Again, a good example of the flowers of June in water-based media, kind of interesting and a little bit different. Okay, let's shift gears again. Let's go with a rectangular cube. These kinds of things have become very, very popular, and there's no reason why we can't do the flowers of June in something like this. Once again, we're making use of the eremeris for height on this design. Notice the eremeris here, some spirea over here. Spirea is an incredibly well-keeping material. Incidentally, some of these materials that we're using, a lot of them, the eremeris, the spirea, the viburnum dentatum, the physocarpus that we have here, these are being produced by an incredible farm called Blooming of Beloit in Beloit, Wisconsin. They come up with some of these specialty materials, an American farm in the heartland of our country. Absolutely incredible stuff that we enjoy making use of in these particular designs. This is called compass grass, incidentally, the foliage that's being used here. It's being used to give that very contemporary, trendy, chi-chi kind of an effect. We can go from one extreme to another in doing the flowers of June. Here is a small rectangle. Here's a big one. Look how much bigger this one is. This is a great one for, say, entry areas and for places where you need something that has a little bit more size. Once again, using some of these incredibly wonderful materials we have in this particular design. Again, some of our eremeris up here, over here, here, and so forth. We've got some of our physocarpus over here, viburnum dentatum, and lots of our willow coming around here. A very natural design done in water-based media, again giving a very, very different look to our design because of these wonderful flowers available at this time of year. An amazing design. Here, let's go from rectangles that we have. You notice we got a small rectangular base, a medium, if you wanted to call it, because it feels big compared to the first one. Now here's a big rectangular base. So we're going to go from one extreme to another in this. This particular container is one of my favorites. You noticed, my viewer, that we've used this particular base before in some of our other things. It is an incredible container. It's kind of a plastic resin kind of base, but again, let's take a look at it closely and see what we're using in it. We're using our eremeris to create height on this design, eremeris to create height, and then the body of this design again makes use of many of these other wonderful botanicals available at this time. Some of our physocarpus is used in here, some of our willow over here and here, some of our incredible roses to create a focal point, and the folks at Blooming of Beloit have provided us with another kind of an allium that we've used in this particular one. This is called allium seed pod. Isn't it amazing? I normally think of allium as those big white puffy spheres, but I've got to admit this particular variety really has captured my heart. It has incredibly long stems. We can come up with all kinds of effect. We've managed to sink a few of them here and there just for visual interest on this design. So we have another example of the flowers of June. Let's see what else we can come up with on this. Here's another thing, making use of some interesting materials. Here is a base that happens to be one of my favorites. We're using a lot of moss on some of our containers these days, and if you look at this one, you'll notice that is in evidence here. It is a basket kind of container. It's got moss attached into it, so it gives a very, very natural look to our base. Again, the use of eremeris in this particular design. Coming up on the other side with several of these incredible allium that we talked about a minute ago, the allium seed pod, a few allium drumsticks worked here a little bit lower, the viburnum dentata in here, some physocarpus, a little of our willow over here, making very, very great use of these wonderful materials from Blooming and Beloit, as well as our lilies and rose. Well, my viewer, you can see we have some incredible things here. When you are thinking in terms of some of your possibilities in terms of designing at this time of the year, think in terms of the magnificent flowers of June. I present to you, my viewer, some incredibly interesting materials. Get them, play with them, do some of your designing with them. You'll be amazed that it gives your designing a very interesting look. On behalf of all of us here at Rittners Floral School, we thank you for coming in and visiting with us today.